Hello and good evening. Welcome to Art's Business Roundup. My name is Shanukanish Fernando. We at Art Television bring you a collection of business highlights. Let's have a look at the headlines for today. President engages the nation through a special address on the economic crisis. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi assures Sri Lanka continued support and close relations. IMF provides government with independent economic report ahead of the possible technical assistance. The central banks recently announced increased in interest rates for three specified transaction types are coming into effect. The CBSL has stipulated maximum interest rates which can be charged by licensed, commercial and specialized banks for the credit card, advances, pre-arranged, temporary overdrafts and pawning advances.
The rates are as follows. 20% per annum on credit card advances commencing from the next billing cycle. 18% per annum on pre-arranged temporary overdrafts. 12% per annum on the money lent for pawning advances collateralized by personal articles made of gold accepted as a pledge for all new pawning advances and existing pawning facilities that are renewed. This increase in rates was initially announced on 4th March after the CBSL's monetary policy review, following which policy rates saw a steep rise by 100 basis points. Recently, the CBSL has adopted monetary policy tightening measures which include an increase of policy interest rates to lessen the possible build-up of underlying economic demand pressures, which in turn would help ease external sector pressures, thus promoting greater macroeconomic stability. The CBSL states that the new interest rate for these three specified transactions were determined after taking into consideration the increase in overall market interest rates.
Following the free float of the rupee, the central bank has withdrawn the program of offering high interest rates on the foreign currency deposits by banks. The CBSL states that the move takes into account recent monetary policy tightening measures, expected macroeconomic developments, and the prevailing interest rates on foreign currency deposits.
The CBSL Monetary Board issued an amendment to the Monetary Law Act, Order No. 3 of 2021 on maximum interest rates on foreign currency deposits of licensed commercial bank and the National Savings Bank. This amendment removed the existing maximum interest rate limits imposed on foreign currency deposits. Accordingly, Orders 2 and 3 of the cited order have been deleted. Prior to this, banks were told that the maximum interest rates that were to be offered or paid by a licensed commercial bank and the national savings banks on foreign currency deposits with a maturity of less than or equal to 1 year shall be based on the simple average of the primary market yields of 364 days Treasury bills determined at auctions held during the last calendar month of the previous quarter, less 150 basis points or 5% whichever is higher. The maximum interest rates for foreign currency deposits a maturity of more than 1 year were to be determined based on the market behavior. In the case of a special deposit accounts in foreign currency, the additional interest rates that can be offered or paid was to be over and above the interest rate applicable on foreign currency deposits. The auctions for calculating the above average rate were to be selected based on the auction date falling within the corresponding calendar month and not the settlement date. The maximum interest rates for the forthcoming quarter were to be computed on the last working day of the current quarter. When the previous program was announced on 30th December 2021, banking analysts predicted the maximum rate could be as high as 6.5% for normal foreign currency deposits and 8.5% for special deposit accounts.
Finance Minister Biz RoundUp held talks with the IMF Asian Pacific Department Director Chang Yong-ri to gain assistance in dealing with plunging reserves, sliding currency and surging inflation. Sri Lanka is expected to start formal negotiations with the IMF in April on a possible program that could boost reserves and put growth on a sustainable path. During the talks, officials discussed details regarding the IMF's latest economic review on Sri Lanka and the assessments outlined by IMF executive directors at their board meeting in February. Director Ree met President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the cabinet was to be informed about the talks at the weekly meeting on Monday. In a recent tweet, Central Bank Governor Ajit Nivard Cabral stated that the IMF meetings with Sri Lankan authorities are not pursuing debt restructuring. IMF Executive Board in their 2021 Article 4 consultation with Sri Lanka noted that the country faces mounting challenges, including public debt that has risen to unsustainable levels, low international reserves, and persistently large financing needs in the coming years. Against this backdrop, they stressed the urgency of implementing a credible and coherent strategy to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability while protecting vulnerable groups and reducing poverty through strengthened, well-targeted social safety nets. The dollar shortage has caused reserves dropping to $2.31 billion in February. The nation struggles to pay for critical imports including fuel, food and medicines. Reduced capability to purchase fuel has caused shortages with rolling power cuts, long lines at pumps and record levels of inflation. Prices rose even higher when the government finally allowed the currency to free float, causing the rupee to fall by 30%. In the meantime, Cabinet spokesperson Minister Ramesh Pathirana said that Finance Minister Basit Rajapaksha was empowered by the Cabinet of Ministers to engage the International Monetary Fund. However, Minister Pathirana did not elaborate on whether the discussions would be restricted to receiving only technical assistance from the IMF.
Cabinet approval has been given to the Honorable Finance Minister to go ahead and to discuss with the IMF. Their representatives are already in Sri Lanka, and we are getting their technical assistance. So for that, to initiate discussions and to get their assistance, we have okayed that decision, but we have to take it from there, what sort of condition they put forward, and we will look at from the country side as well. So from there, we will take it forward. Whether it's restricted to technical advice and other sort of assistance, it's a matter of time. So we'll have to discuss with them and see on futuristic basis.
We'll be back with more news after this commercial break. Welcome back. The government has engaged in a number of responsible measures to counter the economic turbulence that is currently facing due to reduced dollar inflow. Recent developments have shown the government to be reaching out nations with a favourable outlook towards Sri Lanka and institutions of global governance for assistance. Finance Minister Basit Rajapaksha flew to India on Tuesday to finalize the $1 billion assistance package from India. The funds are to be used to purchase essential imports including fuel, food and medicine. Recently, India and Sri Lanka signed a joint venture and shareholders agreement for the Trincomalee Power Company Limited, which is a joint venture between NTPC from India and the Ceylon Electricity Board for developing a 100-megawatt solar power plant at Sampur in Sri Lanka. Further, the Cabinet of Ministers provided Finance Minister Basit Rajapaksha with approval to seek technical support from the International Monetary Fund in finding solutions for the current economic crisis. Apart from this, 3 cabinet subcommittees appointed by the President last month to negotiate with China, Japan and the Middle East of economic matters met for the first time on 9th and the 10th March of 2022 at the Parliament. With the Foreign Minister as chair, officials were directed to obtain requirement lists from all Sri Lankan bodies to solicit from partner countries. The China subcommittee agreed to fast-track the China SLFTA. With the Foreign Minister as chair, officials were directed to obtain requirements list from all Sri Lankan bodies to solicit from partner countries. The China subcommittee agreed to fast-track the China SLFTA. Meanwhile, the Cabinet of Ministers approved a proposal to appoint a 14-member advisory committee comprising businesses, leaders and academics to assist the 11-member Economic Council appointed by the President early this month. The opposition had inquired as to why the Economic Council did not include any economic experts. Accordingly, the new cabinet decision has included a number of business personalities such as Dhammika Pereira, Krishan Balendran, Wish Govindasamy and several others.
ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමන් විසින් පසුගිය සතියේදී ශ්‍රී ලංකාව මුහුණ දෙන වර්තමාන ආර්ථික අර්බුදය පිළිබඳව එම කළමනාකරණයට උපදෙස් ලබා දීම පිණිස ජාතික ආර්ථික සභාවක් පත් කරනු ලැබුවා. එම ජාතික ආර්ථික සභාවට ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන්ම අන්තර්ගත වෙලා සිටින ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ජනාධිපතිතුමන් සමග ඇමතිවරු සහ නිලධාරීන් පිරිසක් එම ආර්ථික සභාවට සහාය වීම පිණිස උපදේශක කමිටුවක් පත් කරන්නට කැබිනට් පත්‍රිකාවක් ඊයේ අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඉදිරිපත් කොට තිබුණා. එම කමිටුවට ඊයේ අනුමැතිය ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ යටතේදී ආර්ථික සභාවට සහාය වන උපදේශක කමිටුවට මහාචාර්ය එච්.වී. කරුණාරත්න මැතිතුමාත්, මහාචාර්ය ශිරන්ත හීන්කෙන්ද මහතාත්, ආචාර්ය දුෂ්ණි වීරකෝන් මහත්මියත්, ධම්මික පෙරේරා මහතාත්, ක්‍රිෂාන් බාලේන්ද්‍ර මහතාත්, අශ්රෆ් ඔමාර් මහතා, ආචාර්ය හාන්ස් විජේසූරිය මහතා, ඒ වගේම විශ් ගෝවින්දසාමි මහතා, එස් රංගනාදන් මහතා, රංජිත් පේජ් මහතා, සුරේෂ් දමෙල් මහතා, ප්‍රභාස් සුබසිංහ මහතා, දුමින්ද හලංගමු මහතා සහ සුජීව මුදලිගේ මහතා යන එම මහත්ව මහත්මින් 14 දෙනෙකු ජාතික ආර්ථික සභාවට උපදේශක කමිටුව හැටියට සහාය වීම සඳහා පත් කිරීමට ජනාධිපතිතුමන් විසින් කරන ලද යෝජනාවටත් ඊයේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩල අනුමැතිය ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා.
Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan bin Abdullah Al Saud paid a courtesy call on the President and Prime Minister on Monday. During his meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the President requested Saudi Arabia to invest in several sectors of the Sri Lankan economy.
The President outlined foreign investment opportunities in the sectors of agriculture, renewable energy generation, technology-based development and the Colombo port city. The impacts on Sri Lanka due to the pandemic, lower remittances, reduced inbound tourism, reduced rainfall and hydropower and the fuel shortage were conveyed to the Saudi Foreign Minister. The Saudi Foreign Minister has expressed that with his country's special attention to renewable energy generation, he is in a position to assist Sri Lanka in this sector. The President and the Saudi Foreign Minister also discussed strengthening of bilateral relations in a number of areas. This matter was further discussed at the meeting between foreign ministers. Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Piri's meeting with his Saudi counterpart expressed keen interest to transform Sri Lanka-Saudi bilateral ties into a results-oriented, multifaceted partnership. The two ministers agreed to a strong relationship in a multitude of areas for mutual benefit in the current global context. Minister Piris noted with appreciation Saudi Arabia's strong support and empathetic approach towards Sri Lanka at the United Nations, especially during the 49th session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. Foreign Minister Professor Piris encouraged Saudi investments in the Colombo port, Hambantota port, dedicated pharmaceutical zones in Hambantota, newly identified IT parks, fabric textile zone in Batclo, and sought more employment opportunities for Sri Lankans in the Saudi Arabian job market. During the talks, the Saudi Foreign Minister reiterated the commitment of the Saudi Arabian government to further deepen the already buoyant bilateral relations between the two countries and further emphasized economic cooperation. He underscored the vision of Saudi Arabia 2030 as means to transform Saudi Arabia from the present dependency on oil to digital economy in the Middle East region.
The central bank, through its issuance of Sri Lanka development bonds, raised $152.54 million on Monday. The amount offered for the bid was $50 million, with possible upsizing by an additional 3 times based on favorable market response at a fixed rate determined through competitive bidding for all maturities. An issuance window for SLDBS was opened with the announcement of the auction results until close of business on the business day prior to settlement. This was at the weighted average fixed rate determined for the respective maturity at the auction up to the limit specified for possible upsizing on first-come, first-served basis. The 6-month tenure received $162.54 million in bids, from which the central bank accepted $152.54 million at a weighted average fixed rate of 9.48%. In the January auction, 5 months tenure rate was 7.70%. The 1-year tenure received only $2.50 million in bids, and the tenures for 1 year 10 months, 2 years 10 months, and 4 years 9 months saw no bids. As previous SLDB auctions went undersubscribed, the recent auction is viewed as a success. This is the most successful SLDB auction in recent times, with the previous exercises going undersubscribed significantly. In February, the central bank reported raising $111.5 million via SLDB direct issuances. This measure was taken after the SLDB auction in January for $100 million was undersubscribed, with only $86 million received in bids, of which the bank accepted only $11.35 million. We'll be back with more news after this commercial break. The Purchasing Managers Index compiled by the CBSL shows that in February the country's manufacturing and services activities expanded. The CBSL said the manufacturing PMI remained expanded, recording an index value of 52.5 in February 2022. The central bank attributes this to the continued expansion in new orders. However, production, stock of purchasers and employment declined, while suppliers' delivery time lengthened on a month-on-month basis. An expansion in new orders, particularly in the manufacture of food and beverage, was witnessed in February 2022 ahead of Sinhala and Hindu New Year season. However, the production declined on a month-on-month basis, especially in the manufacture of food and beverage and textiles and wearing apparel sectors, following the seasonal pattern as there were lesser number of working days in February and due to supply-side constraints. Moreover, the stock of purchases declined due to supply-side impediments. It was highlighted that acquiring imported raw materials and packing materials was difficult due to delays in opening letters of credit. For the next 3 months, the expectations for manufacturing activities remains at elevated levels, anticipating continuous improvements in the economic condition both locally and globally. The central bank also said the Purchasing Managers Index for the services sector PMI recorded an index value of 51.8 in February 2022, indicating a marginal growth across the services sector. The marginal increase was underpinned by the increases observed in new businesses, business activities, and expectations for activity sub-indices. New businesses rose at a slower pace in February 2022 compared to January 2022, particularly with the improvements observed in financial services, professional services, real estate, telecommunication and transportation subsectors. Businesses' activities continued to grow in February, even though at a slower pace, with the improvements observed in several subsectors. Accordingly, financial services, education, professional services, other personal activities, real estate and transportation subsectors reported improvements during the month. In addition, business activities in accommodation, food and beverage subsector also recorded a marginal growth amid the steady increase in tourist arrivals, despite the disturbances occurred from disruptions to fuel and electricity supplies during the latter part of the month. Nevertheless, business activities related to wholesale and retail trade subsector observed a deterioration during the month. Employment fell slightly in February for the first time after 3 months of increase due to retirements and increasing number of resignations. Meanwhile, the backlogs of work continued to decline at a higher pace during the month. Expectations for business activities for the next 3 months improved in February, yet at a much slower pace, as the wholesale and retail trade subsector expect their business outlook to deteriorate due to cost pressures and supply shortages following the float of the exchange rate and import restrictions. Further, the uncertainties associated with fuel, electricity and LP gas supplies are also negatively affecting most of the subsectors. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa engaged the nation through a special address on Wednesday to comment on the struggle faced by the people while his nation is in crisis. President Rajapaksa discussed the causes and highlighted the steps his government has taken to mitigate the situation, provide relief to the people and overcome the crisis.
අද මා ඔබ අමතන්නේ අභියෝගාත්මක අවස්ථාවකයි. ඔබගේ එදිනෙදා ජීවිතයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩවල හිඟයක් සහ මිල වැඩිවීම ගැන මට හොඳින් වැටහෙනවා. ගෑස් හිඟකම, ඒ වගේම ඉන්ධන හිඟකම, විදුලිය ඇන හිටීමේ තත්ත්වය වැනි ගැටලු ගැන මා හොඳින් දන්නවා. පසුගිය මාස දෙක තුල මහජනතාව විඳි අනේක විද දුක්කම් කටළු ගැනත් මා ඉතා සංවේදී. ඒ ගැන කළ හැකි උපරිම දේ අප කළත් අපගේ පාලනයෙන් බැහැර හේතුන් නිසා එම තත්ත්වය තව දුරටත් පවතින බව මා දන්නවා. කොවිඩ් වසංගතය නිසා ඉහළ නැංවූ නැව් ගාස්තු, භාණ්ඩවල මිල ඉහළ යෑම, යම් යම් භාණ්ඩවල හිඟයන් යන මේ සියල්ල අපේ පාලනයෙන් තොරයි. එනමුත් අපි ජනතාවගේ පැත්තෙන් බලා සහනශීලී පිළිවෙතක් අනුගමනය කරනවා. මේ අර්බුදය කිසිසේත්ම මා විසින් නිර්මාණය කළ එකක් නොවේ. විසඳුම් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමේදී යම් කාලයක් අපට දුෂ්කරතාවලට මුහුණ දෙන්නට වෙන බව අපි සියලු දෙනාම වටහා ගත යුතුයි. ඒ නිසා අධෛර්යමත් නොවි මේ අර්බුදකාරී තත්ත්වයෙන් ගොඩ ඒමට ජාතියක් වශයෙන් එක්වන ලෙස ඔබ සියලු දෙනාගෙන්ම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
Finance Minister Biz Rajapaksa met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday and was reassured that India would always stand with Sri Lanka as a close and friendly neighbour. Finance Minister Rajapaksa is in New Delhi on a 2-day official visit to follow up on short and medium-term economic cooperation measures that were agreed to during his visit to India last December. The cordial meeting between was held at the Indian Prime Minister's office in Parliament House. Finance Minister Rajapaksa thanked Prime Minister Modi for all the assistance India has provided Sri Lanka. The dignitaries discussed many issues regarding the bilateral relations which covered the areas of agriculture, renewable energy, digitalization, tourism and fisheries among others. The Prime Minister and the Minister discussed Sri Lanka's decision to move towards organic agriculture. Prime Minister Modi highlighted the advantages of natural farming and India's experience in developing related techniques and products including nano-fertilizers which could be of relevance to Sri Lanka. They agreed that cooperation in development of renewable energy in Sri Lanka is mutually beneficial and that it should be actively pursued. Given India's expertise in unique digital identity and the proposal for bilateral cooperation in a similar Sri Lankan program, it was stressed that such an identity could serve as a platform for providing unique services to ordinary citizens. The significance of promoting the Ramayana trail in Sri Lanka and Buddhist circuit in India, including Gujarat, was highlighted for attracting a large number of Indian tourists to Sri Lanka. A specific reference was made to the MOU on tourism signed between Sri Lanka and the state of Gujarat in 2009, which could serve as a template to promote tourism at the state level. Prime Minister Modi and Minister Rajapaksa also discussed the fisheries issue between the two nations and recognized its complex and multidimensional nature. The discussion on this topic covered humane treatment of fishermen, livelihood enforcement, ecology of the ocean, and the early release of arrested fishermen and their boats. The two dignitaries also agreed on the urgent need to find a lasting solution to this complex issue. So with that, we'll be winding up for today. Thank you for joining me. This is Shanuka Fernando, signing off.